Hello everyone and welcome to the IBU podcast. My guest today is Sarhat Petrosyan, architect, urban planner, founding director at SP2 Design and Planning, founder of Urbanlab in Yerevan, and board member of Chamber of Architects of Armenia. Welcome.
Hello.
We're going to talk about architecture and what it means to be an architect. Why did you choose this career? Why did you choose to become an architect?
I think it was kind of logical decision. When I was a kid, I was just playing a lot with Lego, as majority of the kids do. But also I was just drawing the plans and then building them. So that was my mother's recommendation. I was thinking to become economist, historian, or architect. So I chose architect, but I went to the direction of urban planning, which is closer to the economy and history. So there wasn't something like really magical why I chose to become an architect.
Oh, so you combined these things that interest you, like economy and architecture and everything. You mentioned Legos. That was very interesting. So you played with Legos and you saw that you have passion for that.
It's not that I played, I continue to play. So usually always I'm buying for my girls Legos first and then something else. I'm building them the first time because I can't resist. And then I continue to play with Legos.
Yeah. Are they interested in architecture also?
My older one draws a lot, so there's this like kind of intention.
Following your footsteps. Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully that won't happen, but like we'll see.
You never know with kids. What do you think is necessary precondition that someone must have to enroll in the School of Architecture and become an architect?
I think it's like architecture is quite like multi-layered and not. It's quite complex profession. It's a source of like more than 10 or 15 kind of different disciplines that started from architecture, and it continues to feed different kind of disciplines. So new kind of architects are kind of professions are being formed, established. So I think it's crucial to have academic background. So from the history, we have some fascinating architects or architecture examples that were built, designed, and executed without having a person behind it, an architect behind it, or person with architectural education. But I think because of the development of the technology and construction industry, now it continues to become like more complex. So it's crucial to have that proper academic background.
Okay, you have been on both sides, on educational and professional process. So what are, in your opinion, flaws and advantages of current educational programs in architecture? From this point of view, you are doing it as in your work as a professional. How would you say that are the biggest maybe mistakes in education or lacks in current educational process of architects?
I think the main discourse is about what we expect from architectural education. So in general, like if we generalize, there are two main different approaches. One, that the architectural education needs to teach how to think, or it needs to give capacities or just technical kind of knowledge to the future architects. I'm support of the first path. And so I think this is the main issue currently in the discourse of architectural education. So because like we can give a lot of technical knowledge to students, they can like really go to detail, have technical capacities to design something, but there is a kind of intangible something in architecture creation or a process of doing architecture. So this is something that you need to learn during the education, and it's mainly you learn that from dialogue between you and other professionals. So I think for me, the architectural education or architecture higher educations are this platform when you meet different thinkings, and during that process, you develop your own thinking. So I think this is the main challenge, to protect let's call it protect architecture education from industry because industry wants to have future technicians, future future architects with quality of being able to design, but in the technical sense, not on the thinking sense. So I think this is the main challenge, and I'm really strong supporters of the first path.
I've heard many times this saying, to think like an architect. What does it mean? You mentioned this thinking. What does it actually mean?
It's really hard to say, but for me, it's like structured thinking, spatial thinking, and also for me, architecture, because there is always this dispute: architecture is art, it's science or something. For me, it's social science first. So this it's not one kind of, it's not one dimensional. So it's multi-dimensional process. So as I said, spatial thinking, contextual thinking, social thinking. So putting all these things together is the complex thinking that we architects think that only we know how to think in that way.
Okay. What is the role of professional marketing in this educational process? As you said, maybe they are trying to make these industrial architects, but how can we combine these two things and maybe to make everybody happy?
No, I think industry needs to understand that a person after graduation is not ready to do the design, which is even from perspective of industry on the long run, I think it's even feasible for the industry, because it's really bad definition, but you receive or you get cheaper labor because they don't know how to design, so they're coming to learn in the industry. This is what we have also in our chamber. So even maybe you can have degree in architecture, you can't become certified architect, so you need to have working experience. So I think this is crucial, that you learn by doing all this this process, and the industry needs to be patient and understand that. So it's architecture is kind of experience-based discipline, and so whenever you give a hint to the architectural education facilities or institutions that what kind of professions you need, you will receive that after 2-3 years, not immediately. So you really need to think in advance, and understand what's the next step, and then based on that, support architectural education to be able to have the expected results in 2-3 years.
Yes. Do practicing architects want to be involved in educational process?
Yeah, of course. I think it's really enjoyable, fun process. It's not only fun, it's also a unique learning process, because it's really interesting when different architects, different personalities, different individuals are thinking about the same topic from different points of view. So I think architecture competitions and teachings and plus architecture theoretical kind of discussions that we can have in professional circles are the three main opportunities for architects to self-develop themselves. So I think it's really useful for any architects to be somehow connected to the teaching or in the educational process.
You said that it would need 2-3 years for educational programs to adapt to the needs of the market, but do they even try to follow these needs of the market when it comes to architectural education? How can we bridge this gap?
So architecture is also about the long-term planning. So when you're designing a building, from the first idea, from the first sketch to final realization, it takes maybe 2-3 years in the best case. So we have this we think that we have this capacity to think in advance. So I think whenever we are just developing a concept, architecture concept that takes 3 years to become to reality, so it's more or less the same thing. So we need to think, okay, what we want from architecture educational institutions in the next 3 years. So, and it's not the case that one architect sitting in his office or her office can say. So it's also like a dialogue between educators, between thinkers, between other disciplines that are supporting architecture to find out how the profession will evolve.
What are the challenges of contemporary architects and architecture as profession and architectural education?
Oh, it's a tough question. But I think I really like this topic that about 20, 30 years or 40 years ago in some countries, when computers became part of the design process, there were some specific architects with the capacity of drawing through computers. They were called operators or something like that. So, but now every architect works with computers. So now I think the challenge is that using GIS and BIM technologies, geographical information system and building information management, that are new challenges. So these are becoming tools in architecture design, but we consider them different professions. So I don't know how it will be evolved. So from my current perspective, I think these are the separate professions, but you never know what will happen later on. But like these, at least these two are kind of influencing a lot for some architects to rethink how the design process should go. Like more or less it was the same when these computers, like these renderings, 3D modelings became part of the design process. So many architects are combining this capacity with their design process, but in some cases, like people like me, we consider that different process. So there should be specific professionals that are really focused on that. So, but about like 100 years or 200 years ago, there was like architects who was like sculpture, painter, structural engineers. Now we have like plenty of professions. So I think this is really nice process that architecture is kind of evolving and feeding different professions, meanwhile re-evaluating itself as a creative process.
Wonderful. How should architecture as a profession then be reinvented? You said you think these things need to be separate, different professions.
Like digital thinking, of course, influenced a lot architecture and continues to influence. Also, there's the other process that in the last 20, 30 years, this sustainable development topic became part of our daily life. And that is like these two processes are going parallel and kind of pushing the limits of reinventing or redefining what is architecture. So the one like goes really like for the future, the sustainable development a bit takes us back from where we started. So I think like balancing these two processes and finding common ground between these two is the main challenge. And this is what architects really need to find, how they bring these two processes together.
Let's talk about the project now. What is your role in this project?
My role, like my institution that I'm representing here, is that trying to feed the process, as I said, the expectations of industry. Of course, there isn't like, the industry is like homogeneous, it's not homogeneous thing, so there are different architects have different expectations, but we are also trying not only present our point of view, also like industry as a whole. So trying to do the process that I was saying, like okay, what we are expecting from our architectural education institutions in 3 years, 4 years. I think it's really crucial, and I think it was really wise to invite us to be part of this process, which is really interesting for me personally and also for the industry.
Yes, we need to combine the industry and universities and education process to get the best result out of this project and everything in general. So can you make parallels or the similarities between Armenian and Bosnia and Herzegovina as well as European Union educational programs? What are the differences, similarities? And
it's a bit like difficult because I don't know that well the Bosnian context, especially in the education, although like the colleagues representing Bosnian educational institutions, we spent plenty of time together around developing this curriculum, etc. But I think, as I said, the main challenge of like what kind of expectations we have from the future architects, and the other thing is that we should not overestimate the existing Western or EU kind of educational capacities. Of course, for many years they had like more opportunities to develop themselves, but I think there is something that we can also give them. And I think this process is like both two-sided, let's say, giving and getting something.
Receiving, yeah.
So I think that in the long run, but also there's another thing that always I noticed because I'm involved in many projects in EU. So the countries like Armenia, Bosnia, when we don't have really established institutions for, there isn't like strong traditions, so we are more flexible to accept new if we compare with other like more established, let's call them, institutions. So I think it's an opportunity. In some cases, it's a challenge because we don't have that resources, that history, but also like we are more flexible. So I think we need to use that in the best way for development of our educational processes.
So we do have some advantage.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Good. What would you recommend to students of architecture? What experiences or skills to focus on and obtain for their maybe future work?
It's really hard to say. My recommendation, if it's you can call it recommendation,
maybe some advice.
Advice is like always travel as much as they can, read as much as they can, and just fight or discuss hardly about their profession, about their points of view. It's fine if you change your thinking, how your approach is during the time, but at each moment when you are representing your position, you should be really confident and fight for that till the end. So I think like combination all these things will be really helpful for them.
How important is for them to travel and to see the world?
It's crucial. You can this is the main, the best, and the deepest way of learning.
And the most interesting, I would say.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you for this podcast. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed your time here in Sarajevo.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Yes, it's not my second time. It's not my first time. It's my second time. I really enjoyed that, and I hope that I will have more opportunities to enjoy Bosnia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.